we've had in a while, so this is quite exciting, hopefully to many more that we'll be having this year. So for those of you who are seeing me for the first time, I am Annika Järs, the new chapter lead. Sandra's had stepped down last year around June, July, so you've probably seen me behind your laptop screen for the other events. If not, hi, great to meet you all. And for those of you who also need to start an event, I hope you all have a great time and hopefully we see you again. So just a quick overview of this workshop today. So the Government of Estonia has created a digital identity to put together global citizens from around the world and give them an opportunity to create and run their businesses completely online in Europe. This year, the Government of Estonia opened up a pickup point, making it feasible for South Africans to run and establish their businesses completely online in Estonia. So this pickup point is in Johannesburg. Estonia also has the highest number of startups per capita in the world, with 7 startups being grown and founded, 4 unicorn startups being grown and founded by Estonians. I will now hand over to Mats and Annika to take over this workshop. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Annika, for the kind words. And yeah, we're happy to be in Cape Town as well. And been 10 years for me since I was here. And happy to continue the work with Startup Brian as well. So welcome to all of you. Thanks for coming in person. We also like to talk to people straight to face. That's why we did the 10,000 kilometer journey. And I'll give you a brief overview of what e-Residency is, how you can find it useful hopefully today. So e-Residency is actually 6 years old, but as Annika told you, it took us quite a while to come to South Africa, because e-Residency essentially is a government-backed ID document that has the highest security level in the European Union of any ID. And that's the reason we still want one face-to-face meeting with any e-residents that we work with. And that's the reason why it was kind of not feasible for South Africans, because we didn't have an embassy here for a long time, and now we do. We opened a pickup point in Johannesburg. So anyone wants to become an e-resident, you essentially just have to go online, fill like a airline ticket sort of form. The police will try to find out if you're planning to be a terrorist or a criminal. They'll do their best to find that out, might ask some questions, and then you go once, you give your fingerprints, and you sort of become an e-resident. And you can set up a company in 15 minutes. Today we won't have an e-resident yet, but we will have we're having a couple more events coming up with them as well. Just about Estonia. So Estonia, we lost our statehood for 50 years, and we were run by a communist party of another country for a long time. And when that ended in 1991, there was a big wish to try new things and really build a state that is efficient, that is effective. And we do have a population of 1.3 million, so having a state is quite costly. So Estonia did a lot of experiments in the 90s, and essentially, for example, our legal system, our constitution is based on the German case, so we try to make it very effective. And on the economic reforms, Estonia went to IMF and Sweden, for example, and we tried out some tax rate policies, like for example, we have a flat income tax rate, and we also have a rule that if you don't pay out dividends from any profits, any corporate profits, then basically the effective corporate income tax rate is 0% until you take out dividends. So we tried a lot of new policies to really grow capital and really to make Estonia an effective business environment. But speaking about e-governance, this was something that hadn't been done anywhere. So that was something that Estonia really started to experiment with things. In the 90s, they put the tax forums online, and they realized that a lot more people started to pay tax. And the government got a lot more tax revenue. So in the end, by the year 2000, Estonia sort of made it compulsory for any citizen to have a ID document, which is a digital ID document, which is very similar to e-residency card. Essentially, it just had a photo on as well, so it's like a photo ID as well. But how it works is that you sort of put it to a USB card reader and to a computer, and then you can sign documents digitally, and you can also encrypt them digitally. So it's one of the highest, most secure government-backed, sort of identification systems in the world. As we built our e-government up, it took some time, of course. But by the end of 2000s, all the government services were online for citizens. So you could do anything online, like vote in elections online, name your baby online, do a company online, except two things: you couldn't get married or divorce, or buy and sell property. And the buy and sell property will also change during COVID times. But our e-government systems, essentially, we're still working on it. We're still making it easier. For example, if you have a baby, you sort of, like there's some invisible services we want to include that you don't have to go and fill a form somewhere, but you can just get an email and tick that yes, I want the government support. Or we're still making it easier, still working on it. But e-residency, as such, as an idea, was essentially just to open our country, our business environment to people outside Estonia. Because Estonia doesn't have that pretty weather all year round that you have here. So we as citizens also, we actually don't want to spend there like all the days of the year, even though we like it. But we want Estonia to be relevant. So it was in a way just an idea, like a government startup sort of idea. Let's see what happens. And we found out that it's really cumbersome in a lot of countries to establish companies, to run companies, especially for small entrepreneurs, for freelancers. They were suffocated by bureaucracy in a lot of countries. And what was a big surprise for us actually is that e-residency turned out to be really popular inside the European Union as well. So we thought that it would be a good thing for people who are not in the EU single market to have a company in Estonia and run it from online and have access to EU. But actually it became super popular also by Germans, by French, by Spanish, and a lot of people from there as well. Annika will tell you, Annika Järs is from Startup Estonia. It's a kind of another government branch that promotes startup ecosystem. She'll tell you more about startup ecosystem and how that works out. But I'll tell you about how e-residency functions essentially. And then we can look into some questions as well. So e-residency is a government-backed digital identification document. And the key use case is to establish and run companies 100% online. So the core idea is that you never have to go to government office because you can sign documents online. You can do anything online that you need to. And you can also get digital signature that's valid in the European Union, and you can access a global community of e-residents. They're often very entrepreneurial people, very like-minded people. They love to do new things. A lot of them, for example, they sort of get this location independence sometimes. Some of them become nomads because they don't get angry letters from their tax office anymore, so they can just travel around and have their business with them, take it with them. These are some people, of course, but there's also all sorts of setups. What it's not, it doesn't give you direct access to Estonia, so you don't travel to Estonia with it. There are other means for this. Estonia has a Startup Visa program that Annika will tell you about, and last year also we were the first country in the world to start a thing called Digital Nomad Visa. So Digital Nomad Visa essentially is for something for people who they want to work from distance and their clients are international. And they have to show a certain level of income. I think it's 3,500 euros per month for about 6 months. So there's two easy options for freelancers and startup founders also to move to Estonia if they wish to. Even though e-residency directly doesn't give you that. This is an e-residency kit, so essentially there's a card and a USB card reader. And of course in Estonia, once you get that done, then you have also smart ID, so which is more comfortable, which is like you get codes to mobile to sign documents and everything. It's even easier, so you don't have to bother either to carry around everywhere. Our growth, so e-residency was started December 2014. Currently we have 84,000 e-residents globally, so these e-residents can only be people. And they've started around 18,000 new companies, but these are just new companies. So if they buy old ones or participate in the Estonian economy in another way, that's not counted here. And altogether, the joint revenue of these companies is, I think, is over 5 billion euros. So they do contribute to Estonia's economy actively. Estonia, sort of as a business environment, let's say, I mean, you can get around with English. It's really workable from that aspect. We try to have a very low bureaucracy country. A lot of people have higher education, and we're part of also EU, NATO, OECD. So essentially, the kind of footprint of government should be stable and workable. Just a comparison, how we compare internationally. We should be quite easy to pay tax and start a business. But there's also an international tax competitiveness index that looks at only OECD countries. So it's only 34 countries they look at, but we consistently come as number one, and the reason for it is the corporate income tax system that we have, that you can really defer any income tax payments and grow your wealth. But this is of course something taxes, in a way, tax-wise it matters where you live, where your business is. So this Estonia's tax system, of course, you can benefit if you have some substance in the country, otherwise you probably need to pay tax in South Africa, even corporate ones. But there are tax advisors for it that really can look into your case and look at your setup. And e-Residency is not sort of a tax haven sort of ticket. It doesn't solve that issue. But if you have a company anywhere abroad, you have to look at your taxation situation. We're just a transparent, low-cost, efficient option to have business in Europe. We've been dealing with corruption as well. I mean, we're considering we had a Soviet communist system. We've gone quite far. There's like I think 180 countries in that list. A rule of law index also looks at how independent your court system is. So also the big question is for people, if you invest anywhere, is this a good country to keep your IP? Well, on this index, there's like I think again like 170 countries or something. So it should be pretty efficient, very independent legal system that we try to build. But again, we learned from the Germans, so we still have a little catch up to do there. This is the journey. If some of you wish to become e-residents, hopefully the answer is yes after the event, of course. This is the journey from sort of becoming an e-resident to a company owner. So essentially anyone can get e-residency. You just go online, you fill a form, you tell them what you want to do with it. The Estonian police will do a basic background check for you. Sometimes also people, some of our e-resident community, they sometimes make their business partners or employees e-resident just to get a basic background check for them. It's of course not the best, but our police is a little far from South Africa, but yeah, once you get the card approved, then you go to a pickup point, which is the closest one is Johannesburg. You give your fingerprints, you show your ID once, and then you're done. Then essentially you can sign documents that are valid in Estonia, and you can do the application to start a company online, which should take around 15 minutes. I think the chap that we met, Werner, one of our local community, he did it. He said he managed it in 5 minutes, but then later on he had to confirm it once. And the company's done like fastest the next day. It's confirmed that you have the company running. What you need though, you need a little anchor to Estonia as well, because a lot of this community is worldwide. So you do need basically an Estonian address and contact person. Contact person is not a local director, doesn't have any power over your company, but it's more in a way that it's someone who takes a mail if the company gets sued, for example. And also these companies, what they do, they also offer you bookkeeping services, different sort of advice, that hand-holding if you need, whatever service you might need to run a business, grow it in Estonia. And then afterwards you need a fintech or a bank account. Most of our e-resident companies, they actually prefer fintech accounts. There's not much difference there. But in Europe, in a lot of countries, getting a traditional bank account has been made more tricky because of money laundering scandals in the past. We have two official banking partners in Estonia. Traditional banks, and then we have around, I think, 6 or 7 fintech companies that basically give you a bank account that is pretty much the same thing. Yeah, I mean, it's a fintech account officially, but it's really not much different than a traditional bank. Unless you get payments of, I don't know, 100,000 euros a time, then it might be harder to send it to a fintech account. Your client might get more questions from their own bank, for example. And fintechs don't give you business loans. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same. And around certain entities, so the most popular entity is an OU, which is a private limited company. Super easy to establish, very functional. There is a share capital requirement, 2,500 euros, but you only have to pay that in before you take out dividends. So you can run your company efficiently until that moment. And also then if you pay it in, you can use it for company expenses or company costs. It doesn't have to just sit on the account. And it's a very popular option also for e-residents in a way, because you can sign all the documents abroad, so also online. So for a lot of shareholders or founders, if they live in different countries, it's really comfortable because you don't have to spend time and money DHLing things around. You can actually sign everything online. This is the contact person legal address thing. I think the cost of it is starts from 10 euros a month for a very basic service, basically to just have the company running. But of course, if you want bookkeeping, you want other things, again, the very basic things start from 25 to 50 euros, depending on the volume, for very small companies. And then it grows, the cost. And it's 190 euro fee to establish a company, and also it's 120 euro fee to become an e-resident. So it's, this is a little bit of cost, but comparing to what you need, what bureaucracy you avoid, and how much time you win from running a company, it should be quite a cost-effective thing. This is a marketplace, so essentially e-Residency is a private-public partnership. So there's a lot of partners that we vetted that work with e-resident companies, they know e-Residency, and they support the company. So there are a few virtual office providers there, like One Office Group, which is maybe more for bigger, more traditional companies. There's a few more like e-Residency Hub and other ones who are really good at supporting different e-residents from very global perspectives, global businesses. There are some that are very good options for freelancers like Zolo. It has a really great interface and it's really saving a lot of time and very, very nice interface for people who are freelancers. But they only take, like some of them have some restrictions. Some don't take crypto companies and some only take a single shareholder companies like Zolo. But there are other ones who don't. And there's also tax advisories that we have there. We currently only have one option for South Africa, which is Crowley. But we'll have more of those so that you can really analyze your setup and look at that you don't do anything wrong. But because the responsibility is always with you. Our government can't tell you how you pay tax and where you pay tax. But yeah, it's more that our tax agency, they know perfectly well the OECD rules and the European Union rules. We essentially just, our goal is that people pay tax in the right place. So even with countries that we don't have double taxation treaties operating, with South Africa we have it in quite high stage, but it's not confirmed yet. So they apply the double taxation principle still from the Estonia side, because they know that e-residents don't live here, so you just have to show that you did your, corporate income tax somewhere else, and that's fine with them. And Estonia, also the government agencies work online. You send an email, you get an answer. Sometimes from the tax people, it might be a bit broken in English, but usually quite understandable. Yeah. And there's our community. So there's a lot of these companies very international. So Christelle, for example, she's originally from Cameroon, and she has a HR backup team in Cameroon. She lives in South Africa, clients international. E-Residency works for her international clients, especially to accept payments and deal with their European clients and American clients. Again, Sri Lankan has a startup, and again, e-Residency is sort of the European international office to accept payments more comfortably than to do that in Sri Lanka. Bertrand is a business advisor, French guy, became a nomad. He likes to surf. He always like pictures when he's surfing everywhere, so he doesn't have to deal with the French accountants, and he has projects all the way internationally. Also, a lot of European e-residents, what they do is that they have a company for domestic clients and they have a e-residency company for really international projects. And then did a startup that's essentially helping people to take payments, like freelancers can take payments through her company, essentially. But an international business, very successful as well. Fabio is a digital marketer, also became a nomad after e-residency, left Italy. Ian and Luke, one of them lives in Switzerland, the other one lives in Korea, which are quite out of the way, and they also didn't want a DHL document so much. So that's a function that's working for them. And here are the next steps. So essentially, if you want to become an e-resident, doesn't oblige you with anything, you go online, fill an application, the police will look at it and might ask some questions, and you're done there. On our website, you can sign up for a newsletter, sort of keep being informed from it. We also have the marketplace up there and some knowledge base. Again, on tax, you can write to our tax board directly. and yeah, annual reporting is there as well. But what I would advise for you guys is that if you feel like, yeah, e-Residency might be for me, I would say go to our marketplace, look at their service providers, and talk to one of the virtual office providers. Like, talk to them, arrange a call, tell them about your setup, and they will tell you exactly how it's going to work for you, and then you can kind of start the relationship. And again, e-Residency takes like at least a month to get it, so I would say, you might lose that 120 euros if you don't use it, but then again, if you actually plan to set up a company, get it done, doesn't apply to you for anything. Quite an easy process. So I'll pass on to Annika, and then we can take some questions. That's cool. And please, like, fill your glasses or something to survive the day. Thanks a lot.
Okay, hello. My name is Annika. I'm from Startup Estonia. I'm the Startup Visa and Foreign Relations Project Lead. It's my first time to be here in Cape Town. It's amazing. But yeah, today I will tell you a little bit about this country of 1 million people located in the North Europe. We are close to Finland, Latvia, Sweden and Russia. Has anyone been to Estonia in the audience? No one? Okay, cool. You should definitely come when they open the borders. I forgot to click out. So, before we get into what we do, I think it's important to speak about the definition of a startup. So basically, in Estonia, we have written it down in the law. In Estonia, we work with companies that are based on technology, they are innovative, they have to have a repeatable and scalable business model, and so when we talk about later about Startup Visa, it's really important to keep that in mind, because the definition can vary quite a lot. So Startup Estonia is a governmental initiative which aim is to boost the Estonian startup ecosystem. And we do that in 3 different ways. One way is to make sure that the legislative environment is clear, so this is where the Startup Visa comes in. Back in 2017, we didn't have the program yet, but we found that our startups really needed to hire a lot of talent from outside of the European Union, and the process was rather slow, so we created the program for the startups. We make sure that there is enough funding available for our startups. At the beginning of the program in 2015, when Startup Estonia was initiated, we didn't have enough funds available for our startups, but today about 90% of the funding comes from outside of Estonia. And also making sure that the ecosystem is collaborative. We have about 150 support organizations, which is quite a big number, keeping in mind that it's a country of 1 million people. So when we talk about the numbers, Estonian startup sector is the fastest growing sector in Estonian economy. It's about 30% a year, and we hope to reach the level of being 1/3 of the Estonian economy in the future. So let's see if we get to go there. And as of today, we have 1,223 startups, just checked before this event, so pretty good, and 7 of them are unicorns. And so they have been creating a lot of turnover. Our startups are fairly successful in general, and we don't know exactly yet why are they so successful, but we try to understand this a little bit further, so let's discover that. But one of the reasons are probably our unicorns. So Estonia is in the highest, has the global top for unicorns per capita in the world. So Israel is doing a little bit better, but still we are in the top. And in Europe we are the best ecosystem. So I think we can talk about 2 waves. In the first wave of unicorns, we see that there was Playtech, Skype, and Wise. any of you has any of you used Skype or Wise in the past? Yeah, cool. So the founding engineers of Skype then later founded companies such as Wise and Bolt. And I think Bolt is pretty big here as well, so maybe you know that as well. So basically what we've learned from here is that success gives birth to more success. And our founders of those unicorns are really available in the ecosystem, sharing the knowledge with the other people. So if you get to go to Estonia someday, you will see that everybody is really willing to go for a coffee with you, share their knowledge, experience, and you can ask questions really easily. And that's something that is special. Estonia Startup ecosystem is really friendly. And yeah, and later we had also PipeDrive, and then Zigo and IDMe are founded by Estonians, but their startups are not located in Estonia. Another reason why we think our startups are so successful are probably the support organizations. So you can even go to startupestonia.ee/data and you can basically see all of the different support organizations that we have. So based on the stage where the startup is at, you can basically choose if you want mentoring, or do you need funding or a co-working space, and just get in touch with them and have all the contacts available. And we have about 150 support organizations for 1,223 startups. So I think that's the second reason why our startups are successful. They are really supported. And then Startup Visa, this is my baby. But it's a program then meant for non-European startups and also Estonian startups who wish to hire talent from outside of the EU. But let's look at this video. Just a sec. Let's get that kind of cool. We have founders and Estonian startups who wish to hire talent. So if you are a founder here in Cape Town and you think about Estonian startup ecosystem, then what you can do is basically access Estonia physically with the help of Startup Visa. So Mike's told you a little bit about e-Residency before, so that's a digital access to Estonia, but if you really want to come physically, see our forests, and access the great ecosystem, then Startup Visa is the way to go. Altogether, over 3,400 individuals have relocated to Estonia since the beginning of the program. At the moment, there are not that many people from South Africa yet, but we hope to change that after today. But yeah, we have a lot of people who are relocating from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, India, Brazil, so the list is quite broad. And how do you apply? So you go to Startup Estonia's website, startupestonia.ee/visa, and you can take a quick test to see if you're eligible. So basically, you have to be a startup, but you also need at least an MVP. So we are not looking out for startups who are still in the idea phase, but anything further than that is basically welcome. And you can just, after that, apply for the startup status. What's special about Estonian Startup Visa program as well is that we have a committee which consists of 7 different organizations, angel investors, heads of incubators, people who know what are startups, that give you the validation. So it's not some random government people who don't know what a startup is, but a real knowledgeable people. And if you get the status, then after that you can just go to, from your point of view probably to an embassy. I don't know, you can probably go to the Finnish embassy, which is the closest one here, or even just travel to another country. There is like I think Dubai is on the we have not Dubai but Abu Dhabi or Turkey, and go to the embassy there, get your visa, and then directly go to Estonia, for example, or do it also locally in Estonia. And after that, you can just basically, there are different organizations such as International House of Estonia and Settle in Estonia who help you with the settling. We do programs, to teach Estonian, but normally you can go a long way with English. Most of the people speak the language, so it won't be a problem. But what does the startup visa give you? Well, ease of access to Estonia, but also the rest of the European markets. So maybe you have discovered today that you can really do things globally from Estonia. You don't access only Estonia, but the rest of the world. And that's another thing. Estonia market is so small, so you probably don't think about Estonia's market itself. You will probably want to go because you can access the rest of the world and you don't have to do bureaucracy. And obviously, through Startup Estonia, you have access to the government officials, so programs such as Startup Visa come if there's a problem, or we just keep monitoring the sector and giving the ecosystem answers that they need. Another service that you can use already today are our model documents. So Startup Estonia partnered together with 4 different law firms in Estonia to create model documents for the startup founders. So anything from cap tables to founders agreement can be downloadable on our website, and these are made sure by the lawyers that they are legit, and we have had over 20,000 downloads and we have them since last year, so I think it's a pretty nice product. And then Estonian Startup Database. If you're more interested in our startups, then you can definitely go and check them out on our website. Startup Database is basically gives the most extensive overview of the Estonian startups. So it's a good tool for many investors who are maybe wanting to find the next unicorn and put their money in them. So you can filter them out based on different sectors, how much money they have gained in the last year, what's their employee count, and so on. So definitely a good source. And I definitely recommend to follow us on Facebook. We share all of the events happening in Estonian startup ecosystem, so not only Startup Estonia's doings, but all of the rest of the events as well. So if you want to come to Estonia, then that's probably a good place to do it. We do a lot of webinars as well, so just find whatever interests you the most. Then Startup Estonia has its own podcast. We have 3 seasons with different founders who share their experience, how it was to live in Estonia and why are they even there. And if you have any specific questions, then you can always email me. My email is just on the screen, so feel free to get in touch. And I'm happy to take any questions now together with my team. Thank you.
We have people online as well. No questions, everything is super clear. Yeah. You're all going to go online to apply for e-Residency. That's excellent. Like that very much. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
I feel bad of asking a question. Okay, so hold on. So you say, okay, so I'm actually here for a business partner myself. So for us to apply, I think it's pretty much what everyone here wants to know. I think it's, I'm not going to lie, a lot of an exit strategy out of your own country to see if you've got a safety haven or a home somewhere else. So if we do apply to this and our businesses are successful, if we have, does that mean we do look into an e-Residency? Does that mean our families get e-Residencies? How long does this process take? So for example, I've looked into Portugal quite a lot. as well, and that's more property development and establishing myself there. And if I had to do a business there, I'd have to give people opportunities for work. So I think for us, I don't know if I'm just thinking on behalf of myself, but I really do think that even though my company is online and I love living in South Africa, I'd never want to leave here. If I needed an exit strategy with developing with you guys, is that
so I can respond that as a government person. I also worked as a diplomat for a long time, so I can like put the government hat on properly. I would say that first of all, Estonia has a number of sort of visas and different schemes that you can apply to go there. E-Residences give you that access, right? But if you go to Estonia as an employee, as a founder, you can always take your family with you. That is always there, and that works as well. Yeah.
Yeah, just maybe in terms of startup visa, yeah, you can bring your family, your kids, everybody's welcome. You know, we wouldn't want you to relocate on your own and be sad, so yes. And the process is quite fast. So startup, the part of getting the approval by the committee takes usually 10 business days. And depending on which program you will go to, if even either, you know, D visa or temporary residency permit, which is valid up to 5 years, that process takes from 1 to 2 months. So that's it, like within 2 months and a half, you will be done at maximum.
But what I would add is that a lot of countries do this scheme that you drop money in property and you get the right to, you know, live in their country. Yeah. We don't see that valuable. We want genuine businesses, right? If you create you create a startup and you genuinely want to build that, you're welcome. But we don't sort of build like sort of these schemes that you drop money in our country and then you come.
No, obviously you're building towards your tax and your company, your country's economy.
If you have a genuine idea, most welcome. Join us, and that's what we say as well. We don't want to be in Estonia like all the months of the year. We want to escape somewhere. So Cape Town seems a great option. Definitely come back here. Yeah.
You mentioned there's the startup visa and then also a digital nomad visa. Is that something different? And how does that work?
Yes, these are two different programs. So yes, digital nomad visa was just initiated like last year, so we don't have that many nomads yet. But yeah, two different programs. For digital nomad visa, there is a salary requirement, which is mostly tied to. So I think it's 3,500 euros that you have to have like proof of for the last 6 months. Whereas startup visa, you know, that's why the validation of the idea is so important by the startup committee. So for the startup visa, you have to have the means of 140 euros per month for the next year. You're going to stay in Estonia. So it's about 2,000 euros, much less money. But in order to get that, you need the validation by the startup committee.
I would say digital nomad visa is kind of, again, a government sort of experimenting with things, but the idea where it came from was that a lot of people they go abroad and they work on a tourist visa. Technically, they're not allowed to do that. So it gives people actually the opportunity to go and work in Estonia, live there, and also some e-residents do that, for example, and then they can also do their taxation in Estonia. They do a year there, they can have an e-residency company. The key point for it is just that their clients are abroad. They don't serve an Estonian market, and they can work for any random company, basically, or anything. They just have to show some income for the last 6 months. That's the point. Anything else?
There's a few, let's say, European countries who are not crypto friendly in terms of like sending, you know, money to a crypto exchange, like from a bank account. So does Estonia allow that? Could I, if I have a proper bank account in Estonia, could I transfer money onto a crypto exchange?
So actually, initially Estonia was super open to crypto companies. But then the trouble with e-residencies that we have is that there are lots of e-residency companies who are also crypto, and the people have very little connection to Estonia, and the government had very little capacity to check them. We've got a little bit more hard, but Estonia is still actually a place where a lot of crypto people go. I would just say that if you want to, create a crypto exchange in Estonia, there's some legal company that would advise you to look your setup through, and then from there. But I would say a lot of e-residents get that done, so it should be very workable.
Hi. So I have two questions. I'm trying to solidify them in my mind. The first relates to registering intellectual property. So if the company is already in South Africa and you do choose to take up either of the options available, does it automatically mean that you transition your intellectual capital to Estonia, or is that optional?
Of course, optional, absolutely. I just brought it as an example because this is something that people look into if they incorporate abroad. Is this a good place for it to keep your IP? It is. Doesn't mean you have to bring it back.
Yeah, but it would also be desirable.
And also the thing is, one aspect is because we are in EU single market, an Estonian patent is an EU patent.
Okay.
That's also an important point there.
Yeah, absolutely. And should one exercise that right to, or the option to export, so to speak, or transition the intellectual capital to Estonia, is there some panels that would be able to advise on that process?
So, again, I think this is something that we have a lot of legal companies on our marketplace, and some look into IP as well.
Okay.
And I think this is something that you really should have a chat with them about it. Again, really look at your setup and what you're looking for and what's best for you.
Okay, super. My second question, if you do exercise either of these options and some of the employees within the enterprise choose to become digital nomads, is that an option so that an employee within the organization has, let's call it a compelling event, or an extra attractive function, so to speak? They are part of the organization registered in Estonia, and they have the option to do that, part of the year in Estonia, part of the year in Cape Town.
So digital nomads is something like it's a not all e-residents are digital nomads. It's a minority, but there are a lot of them, and they're very happy ones. Normally they have an e-residency company though, so that they have their own company, which again is super easy to handle and create, right? So then the company doesn't give you health insurance, it doesn't give you pension, so they have to make sure that they get that from good private, some sort of offers. Our country actually looked into creating like a special service for nomads to give them healthcare especially. But then we realized that we're trying to do something that private sector does better in a way. And there's also some maybe disagreement with the government, so we didn't go that way. But we're always thinking about it. That if there is a way with even the government kind of attract more nomads, then we'll do that. But currently, actually, we're discussing what is in discussion and what might get the current government support is that nomads who work in Estonia, that they wouldn't pay, I think, any social tax, which is a big part of the salary tax you pay. I think it's around at least more than half of the salary tax you pay per person. But also one value for, again, in Estonia, is just that our tax code is super simple. Like there's a salary calculators and things. Like in some countries, people have to work a lot, spend a lot of resource to employ people and pay them salaries. In Estonia, it's super easy, and also it's super easy to hire and attract people. It's just that's why we have lower unemployment. We don't have these rules like Southern Europe that you have to pay a person like a year's salary if you sack them, for example. So we said if that happens, but startups have to do that, and that's why we have less unemployment.
Just maybe from the perspective of startup visa as well, one option you could do is really get the status for the purpose of hiring talent. And then, this status is valid for the next 5 years, and you can use that for employing multiple people, not just one. So what those people could do is literally maybe spend some time in Estonia, but do the business also from elsewhere. So it's still, maybe like a more simple visa program would be then an answer, because the easiest one is C visa, which gives you the access for 3 months, for example, to Estonia. So that could be used as well.
And just one more thing about employees. So one of the key pros why Estonia is a good place where to have a startup is that as one of the best employees out in stock option systems. So essentially, if you pay your employees partly in stocks, and they hold the stocks for 2 years, and they just pay that one-time 20% dividend tax, and that's it. So that's one of the most advantages in Europe. Yeah.
One more question. What is the average cost of a cup of coffee in Estonia?
I think something around 3 years, right? That's a lot.
Yeah, just bad question, because somehow our coffee is one of the most expensive ones. But actually, the cost of living in Estonia is where way cheaper than other countries in Europe. You know, so and you know the average salary is around 1,500 euros, so quite quite beneficial compared to other countries. But coffee somehow, yes, is expensive. But I would, if you come, I'll tell you a place where you can get coffee with 2 euros. But 3 is the norm.
Okay, so I was actually just trying to determine, so globally there's this sort of, you determine the cost of living by the cost of a cup of coffee. But I mean, what is the average salary? Is that about 1,500 euros?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So I think if you go to a restaurant, maybe Cape Town's a little cheaper, I would say, than Estonia. But because the alcohol taxes are expensive, they don't want people to booze up too much. Yeah, just Northern European. Yeah.
Are you from Estonia?
Yes, we both are.
Okay. Sorry, you sound British.
I just wanted to ask about the startup visa and the digital nomad visa. I kind of sort of got two parts to the question. One is, if this is a visa that gets given by Estonia, does it give you on-the travel rights across the whole of the EU?
It does, yes. So with that visa, you can travel the entire Schengen area for 180 days per year.
But yeah, I mean, the core thing is just that if you want to get a visa and I don't live in Malta or Spain with it, then you might get in trouble. But the half-time entry in Estonia, half-time you can travel anywhere. That's the logic. That's the Schengen rules.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of thinking more of the perspective where you kind of are nominally based in Estonia and you might spend like maybe half the year there.
Yeah.
But you spend a lot of time doing sales in Spain and France and
Yeah.
Italy, and you can just like...
So only half the time you can be anywhere in Schengen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And the other related one is to that is I'm a bit unclear about, I think there's something special with company establishments in Europe and EU VAT where you only need to establish once and not
That's
in all
right.
27, is that correct?
Yeah, so the EU sort of the one-stop shop for VAT rule, they sort of came into effect, and that's actually a new sort of business case what we're looking into. So essentially, once you register VAT in one country, you can also pay for the others for yourself. But the point is that again, if you, for example, if you have some production in Spain and you have an Estonian company, then again for this kind of stuff that's based and localized, that doesn't apply. But if you move goods from South Africa to all the way everywhere in Europe and use the Estonian company, then you should be able to use just our tax office, which again is really a very online one. So yeah, should be an easy option there.
And does that extend to like legal things as well? Like if I ship it to Estonia, can I ship it everywhere in the
You can
EU
ship it
27?
anywhere. Yeah, you can ship it anywhere. That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
I see there's some questions online as well.
Yeah. Anna, can you look at the online questions?
Other questions?
I just need to find them.
Read them for you.
Please, if you could.
Sorry, I'm just opening the link.
Anna, I think he has access.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice comments. Thank you very much.
Hi Annika, thanks for the presentation. If all of the company directors are abroad, how would you prove that your place of effective management is in Estonia?
Okay, yeah, I think that's essentially an e-resident question. So obviously, thing is that this is very specific to the country you're in. So this is, I think, more to do how South African tax office looks at the rules. And often, like on taxation part, I mean, there's practice and reality are often very different. So again, I would say that please go to a local tax advisor that deals with cross-border taxation. But the key rule there is that to have some substance in Estonia. It's not a bad place where to have employees, where to have part of your business, and also if your business is in South Africa, you don't need an Estonian company. Estonian company is not going to fix any of your problems. The Estonian company will be, or if you want to expand internationally, if you want to expand to Europe. So that's the core rule. Your business has to be international, and then the more substance you have in Estonia, then the less likely you to have place effective management you have. And also, if you have founders or directors from in other countries, that will also support the place.
Okay, another question. Would there be only solution to get the Estonia Startup Visa and travel to Estonia for board meetings? So the answer is no. Still, the purpose of like getting the Startup Visa is to actually relocate to Estonia. It's not meant for doing only board meetings. So you have to be at least half of the time in Estonia.
But if you have Estonian company, board meetings are important as well. I mean, where we have absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of e-residents kind of plan that once a year trip, they meet all their connections and they sort of take something out of it as well.
Do you need to speak Estonian? Can documents be in English? Yes, they can. And
Yes, they can. It's very rare that some little things are in Estonian, and then the service provider that you have will help you.
Yeah, I think that's it. Sort of. I didn't see any other questions.
Any last questions? We can still chat afterwards as well. Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really pleasure.